I'm very happy to be able to give you an update of what's going on with F3 uranium. I read yesterday, I think it was, that one of the analysts that covers us wrote that the JR zone is the most exciting high-grade uranium pre-resource high-grade uranium discovery being drilled anywhere in the world. We're certainly excited about what we've been able to sink our teeth into. So just quickly, this just shows F3's properties. F3 has 18 properties in the Athabasca Basin. I'm going to talk today, focus on the JR zone, which is the new high-grade discovery that we made just less than a year ago now. The discovery is located 25 kilometers roughly northwest of Fission Uranium's RRR and NextGen's Arrow deposit. So there's a zoom up of the property, and you can see the yellow star is the JR zone, and it's at the very north end of those green lines are electromagnetic conductors, so it's at the very north end of what we call the A1 conductor, and the little green one at the south end of A1 there is called A1B, which I'll talk about a bit later. So this is the discovery hole. We announced that on November 21st, so less than a year ago. You read about in news releases about off-scale radioactivity. Well, that's a spectrometer. Off-scale, meaning that there's no numbers. It's saturated, so it can't read. That spectrometer that's the discovery hole. I think it's sitting on a meter of 59.2% uranium. So there is the discovery hole, diamond drills, and what's unusual here is that we use a sonic drill to put in the casing. That's worked really well. It's resulted in there were a lot of lost holes when the diamond drill was putting in the casing. By using a sonic drill, we were getting holes drilled at the JR zone in 2.5 days. And the holes were straight, so it's been a very successful application to get holes drilled in a timely fashion. So this is an overview of A1, and now it's the shear zone, that's the dashed line, and A1B, that's what we call them. So you can see at the very north end of the shear zone is the JR zone. So I'll zoom in on that red box on the next slide, but I want to stay here to try and tell you where we started, where we've been, and now where we are. So at the end of the winter is that outline, which is 0.05 weight percent, the little outline projected to the horizontal. In the summer, all those red stars you see extended that zone along strike and up dip. So at the end of the winter program, we had the zone, JR zone, to a strike length of 105 meters. And we hit hole 60, which was 60 meters south of the discovery and even better than the discovery hole. In the summer, we started with one drill, and right even after the first 8 holes of the summer program, we extended the strike length of the JR zone, that mineralized lens, by 50%, from 105 meters in strike length to 156 meters. And then we hit in the summer hole 68, which was 22 meters above hole 60, also on that section 60 meters south of the discovery hole. And that was the highest, the best hole to date. That hit, hole 68 was 18 meters of 8.8% uranium with this high-grade core, 4.5 meters of 30.1%. So really, that was early on in this, about a quarter of the way through the summer program. So the rest of the summer program, we started filling in along strike from hole 68. So really up dip from where we were at the end of the winter, and we added quite a lot of pounds up dip from sort of in the first half of the summer program. So that winter program was a $9 million program where we drilled 20 holes. In the summer, we were able to use one sonic drill and 2 diamond drills, and efficiencies allowed us, we originally thought we'd drill 30 holes, and then the efficiencies, we increased that to something like 40 holes for the $12 million summer budget. So we then brought in there was 2 drills. We started with 1 drill. When there was 2 drills, it allowed us to start exploring along the strike of the A1 shear zone to the south, and as well to go and try and understand what that other A1B conductor was. So I think Phil said in his talk, when he was talking about hurricane, if I may not quote him exactly, but I think he said it would be unusual if there would be only one mineralized zone of uranium along one pregnant corridor or structure. That's certainly our view. We heard Ross at Fission Uranium, where I was the VP Exploration for 10 years, actually, through all that discovery. And we know at Fission Uranium's Triple R deposit, over a 3.3 kilometer strike length, there's 5 separate zones of mineralization. So when we're at the north end of this we thought it was 3.6 kilometers long. So we started exploring, and you can see the holes. Now, I want to point out to you that we've drilled as we explore. So one drill was exploring this summer to the south along the A1 main shear zone, and then it tested A1B, which I'll talk about in a minute. The other drill was continuing to expand the JR zone. So where we are right now is there's still 2 diamond drills. We've expanded that program to 54 holes now, and we're going to drill all the way to Christmas break. We're lucky to work with Red Cloud. Dave's covered us for a very long time. Red Cloud has been the lead underwriter in all of the financings that have got us this far. I want to point to you to hole 1419, which is a little green dot. And I get that it's a small scale, but I want to keep at this scale. That little green dot. So we started drilling here in 2014. And you can see the faint holes. We drilled a number of holes along that conductor in 2014 and got a sniff of uranium in hole 1419. 0.05% uranium over half a meter. And what we saw was alteration, the geologists, alteration, evidence of hydrothermal fluids altering the rocks that made us want to keep going back. So we motivated to go back and drill again. And in 2019, you can see there's a number of holes around that green dot. In 2019, we drilled a full program to try and see if there was high grade nearby because we saw all the signs. We never found any. So in 2021, we knew that it's like Ross always called me a dog with a bone. We knew that we had to go back, and sure enough, we went back and realized that the geochemistry and the signs in those holes drilled in 2014 were actually improving to the north. And that's why we defined the northern end of the conductor and made that discovery. So why am I pointing to that is because now in mid-August, we tested A1B conductor. And you can see there hole 78. And hole 78 showed that A1B was in fact a parallel shear zone offset by 350 meters. When we drilled the follow-up hole on the same section, that hole 95, what it hit was a sniff of radioactivity. It's not a lot, but a sniff of radioactivity to us is important. But more importantly, it showed down there that it wasn't a narrow shear zone. It was a 400 meter wide. So the width of, now it became a structural corridor with 5 to 10 meter wide faults, between the two main shear zones. So we then stepped 840 meters south of there and drilled hole 102, 83 and 102, and 840 meters away we've hit another sniff of radioactivity. But more importantly, we see much more intense alteration there than we ever saw in 1419. And I'm going to show you a picture of the core, and you'll see huge dissolution of the sandstone, the basement, and clay alteration, and lots of core loss, which means the matrix of the sandstone is dissolved, and then the sand gets all washed away. The basement is intensely deformed, and it's clay altered, and it's bleached. So those are really the signs that speak to the strong potential for there being another high-grade zone nearby. We just finished another $20 million financing. That means that we have all the money in place for us to drill for all of next year. I'll now go through the slides and tell you and just try and show you quickly some of this that I was speaking to. So you see the red outline, this is the zoom up of the JR zone. The red outline is where we were at the end of the winter, 105 meters in strike length. The rest of those holes are the summer holes. You see that we grew it up dip, up dip. Hole 68 is there, and along strike. We extended the strike length to 156 meters. So that's what the discovery hole looks like. You can see this ultra high grade core, 5.5 meters of 18% in the discovery hole, and on the right you see 5 meters of 26%. That speaks to really the tenor of the mineralizing fluids, and I think to the potential that this is a system, and there stands to be more. And the team, we're focused on defining exactly how big the first lens is, the JR zone, and on finding the rest, unlocking the value, finding the rest of the mineralization as fast as we can. So there's some sections. That's the discovery section. You can see that it's a lens that's horizontal coming out of the page at us. I'll step through some sections. That's 15 south. This is on line 45 south. You can see that the mineralization, then the top hole is only 6 meters from the unconformity. So there is the potential for a sandstone-hosted component or an unconformity component to the deposit. You can see that that uppermost hole did test above the JR zone and didn't hit mineralization on this section. So we are, we're trying to choose the right places to test for that. There's 54 meters of dip extent on this section 45, so you can get an idea of how far that lens is up and down dip. There. So yeah, you keep going, 105 south. On 120 south, one of the holes this summer extended the high-grade core another 25 meters south. So that high-grade core goes that far. Now I step to you, these are the sections of A1B. So this section is 2.6 kilometers south. And you can see the sniff of radioactivity, that second hole drilled through both shear zones and intersected, several 5 to 10 meter wide shears. So that's why we see the potential for it being a corridor. This hole is now 840 meters of that. And you can see suddenly there's a lot more sandstone here. So conceivably a drop block. We look for cross faults like Ross mentioned, where all that brown on the drill hole traces is the dissolution of the sandstone. And you can see 840 meters away, another sniff of radioactivity, which again is, significant to us. This is what the core looks like in hole 102, that deeper hole on the section I just showed you. You can see all those block chips that are close together shows you there's no core, so it was dissolution of the sandstone and it's washed away. You can see intense clay alteration. The green bar is the unconformity. And you can see how clay altered and bleached the basement rocks are at the unconformity down here. These are really the kind of rocks that we look for to tell us we're close to close to something. We completed airborne MT on the bottom 2/3 of the property. What you can see is that this is an image of the 2D airborne MT data. What it's managed to do is show us that that corridor extends fully like a third longer than we historically thought it was, so now 5.9 kilometers long rather than 3.6. You'll also see that JR, the intensity of the image talks about the conductivity, and you can see that JR is where the conductivity drops off a little. And so A1B is similarly where the conductivity drops off. These are things we see empirically, but certainly are things that we note. There's a extensive ground 3D resistivity survey that's underway right now to follow this up, to help us generate drill targets. We still have one drill down here. We've dropped down to one drill crew even though there's two drills. And that's because we want to take more time to plan these drill holes, and we want all this geophysics interpreted and in hand so that next year when we go back at it, we have the best targets we can possibly have to come up with find the next zone or zones along this shear zone, and to explore on the rest of the property. It's clear now finding high grade on a northwest trending structure opens up the potential property-wide. And really, that's where we're at.